Sorry guys, got cut off there. Had problems with my phone. Speaking too long and then it just crashed the video. Well, Audi Note, ANE, SPEHE, video number 4. And basically I was just going on about most speakers, most amplifiers, they have like 3 modes that they operate in, and it's basically just power, a bit of fun, a bit of sadness. And you don't have anything that's, between that, you don't have all the subtleties, the nuances. It never really dived deep into the feelings. And that's basically the problem that I have with most speakers, is that there are some, especially some expensive speakers that are really, really, really impressive. They do some incredible amount of layering, and the sound stage and the bass and the punch and just so much of the stuff going on that's so amazing with a lot of the new speakers going on. And I think at least the past 10 years, since around 2010, you can really feel that, every manufacturer has been upping their game, significantly, and especially because of the amount of membrane technology that's going on. It's really creating a distinct, better sound than before. And just to give you some examples, Martin Design, Verity Audio, Peak Consult, Rockport, Focal, fantastic membrane technology. But the problem I have with a lot of not just the brands that I mentioned, but generally brands, is that you get all of this detail by neglecting the most important part of the sound. That's the essence, that's the true deep human-like quality, the earthiness. So you just have this psyched up, boosted effect thing going on. So you have like a cowbell, and then it switches over to another instrument like an electric guitar, and then it goes woo, and it just what's it called? It doesn't go deep into the detail. It doesn't render the detail as it is. It just goes on the surface. So you basically have a lot of surface detail moving about very fast, being very impressive. And it's a nice fireworks show, but you just can't. Once you've heard a speaker like this, you're just like, why would I want to listen to makeup sound, And just find that sad, that there aren't more manufacturers going this old-fashioned way, because that is the way that you get in contact with the real sound, Short signal path, highest quality parts in the world. Thinking differently, having a cabinet that is a lot harder than usual, having a cabinet that goes a lot deeper than normal. People underestimate hertz, how much it really means, and it means a lot. When I listened to Verity Sarastro speaker, that was the first speaker I heard that went to around 20 hertz. I could hear immediately that going down to around 20 hertz is just magical. Magic happens. Energy gets released in a totally different way. There's no reservations. There's no moldiness, negotiation, anything. You hear things as they truly are. And when you have a lot of these monitor speakers, most monitor speakers are horrible because they don't go below 40 hertz. And some actually manage to go maybe down to 35 hertz or something like that. But that's one of the main reasons why monitor speakers generally are really horrible, because you get this bass that's going, yeah, then you turn it up, and it never really lets go of the music. It just, punches you a bit in the stomach, and it goes halfway down, but it doesn't go do, 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 like really lets go of the music, you know. And that's one of the things, the really high quality characteristics of this speaker. When I listen to LP, for example, on this speaker, you know, you can really feel the emphasis on weight and different gears that it goes into. Most speakers, they have like a certain mode that they, you know, convey the sound through, and it always goes through this certain type of filtering way. And with time, your brain actually gets to notice, it's doing this to this to this, and it's like a guy speaking like this that is very monotonous. You just pick up on it, you know, and you lose interest, and you can suddenly, after having owned this piece of equipment for a while, you just go, oh, no more, you know, because you just keep hearing that effect, everything going through that effect. And that's one of the problems I had, for example, with the old B&W speakers, these Kevlar units, was that they were making very impressive sounds, but the problem was that you were hearing the unit more than the music. And it's not just the old B&W speakers, but a lot of other speakers. You're just constantly hearing this filtered sound, this certain priority, this certain material that the driver units were made of, and it just became, with time, irritating to listen to, because everything lost its freshness, its newness, its authenticity. And that's the problem with a lot of this new gear that's out there, is that some of it is too good sounding. And when something is too good sounding, it doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound convincing. It sounds like it's been upsampled 3 times in a studio, and then it's, you know, been remastered and all kinds of things like that. And then it's been upsampled again and downsampled, and then it's going through this filter and that filter, you know. And that's also how you get these certain types of sounds that people are listening to nowadays. DSD DACs, SACDs, the old HD CDs. They all do make a big difference, and sometimes they actually sound pretty good. But the overall problem is that most of these technologies that we use aren't dealing with the core problems. They are just conveying things in a very smart, very cool way that is very different compared to what we're used to. And there are a lot of variations, a lot of complex ways of making equipment, you know. But most of it just doesn't, you know, just doesn't sound natural. And like most people will find out in the future, that is one of the reasons why DSD technology will in the end not sound nearly as good as, for example, a true 16 or 18-bit Audio Note DAC sound. Okay, but in order to tune into that, okay, in order for you to recognize that and really feel it in its fullness, you have to be able to put your equipment to speak with the same type of equipment that's in the speaker, you know, same parts that are in the speaker. So the speaker has to speak the same language as the DAC, as the streamer, as everything else, as the amplifier, even the power box, you know. And once you've got this going, magic happens. So just to let you guys know that. So there is good sound that can exist, but on different levels. So even though you went from your really bad first setup with a Technics amplifier that may only have cost $5 on a flea market, even though you went from that to a better sounding let's say it's a Vincent amplifier or musical fidelity or whatever, even though it's 10 times better going to that equipment, suddenly you may find yourself looking at other equipment that's a lot better, like for example Macintosh, Mark Levinson, whatever, Past Labs. That is equipment that is a lot better, but don't believe for a second that it stops there. It actually gets a lot better once you get into equipment like Ear, Jadis, brands like this, Bob Carver. Then you get into a completely different type of sound. But you have to hear that sound at some good conditions in order for that to be real for you. So if you haven't heard that, then the worst sound that you own will actually sound good enough. So that makes a lot of sense. But still, going from that point on, you will be able to hear equipment that's a lot better going up to Kondo, and Audio Note gear that's only around mid-class of what they make. That will make things a lot better. But then again, there's a whole new level of sound that then most people in the world will never hear, and that's the top Audio Note class of sound. And don't believe for a second when you listen to this top Audio Note gear that probably costs $1 million or something like that, or $2 million. Don't believe for a second that you're even listening to 15 or 20% of how it can really perform. When you're listening to that piece of equipment, usually they are using really cheap crap wired cables. They are out of phase. They usually don't test these things. They put them in rooms that are either too big, too small, whatever, having not really burnt the equipment through so it really lets fully go and is fully developed. And then at the same time using, I don't know, some kind of a cheap source that they may use instead of the really good source, coupled with they generally don't use any form of good power conditioner. Okay, there are a lot of bad power conditioners out there, but I keep saying to them, use at least something like an Isolate mini sub Axis. Use that, okay, on your demo shows. And then they're like, we wanted to keep real, we want to be honest to our customers and play it like it is. And I can understand that, but you have to realize that when you're a customer, that what you're listening to is about 1/10 of how it really performs. And if you think that sound that you're listening to, that's impressive, try to listen to it, under the conditions that I've created, And also notice this, something that most people don't know, is that we've got a bass port here. Look. And if you have a bass port near a structure next to it, like this, and one on the inside, which is rare, you isolate the sound in a very natural way. Now, if I were to remove these 3 boxes here, heavy boxes, and replace them with wooden boxes that match this one box here, the sound will totally change. Okay? It will get a lot more reactive in a good way. Okay? You won't get this dead floor sound effect from having that here. So that's also very important. What I keep seeing at these shows, not only Audi Note, but most other manufacturers, is that you've got the speaker, and you've got air. Then you've got a table, then you've got the amplifier and everything on it. Then you've got air. Then you've got a speaker over there. And then it's like, endless amounts of space, probably going from a 40 square meter room to a 60 or maybe even 80 square meter room. And it's just ridiculous. Are you really expecting a speaker to to give you proper feedback when you go past 5, 6, 7 meters, it has to be, you have to be able to contain that amount of sound waves and make it work, create a true balance. And let's just say that you don't have this speaker. Let's say you think it's crap and you want to settle with another one. Fine. Then just listen to this tip. Just don't go past 5, 6, or 7 meters from this wall to the wall behind your listening position, okay? I mean, I have in this room set up a temporary wall for when I want to listen to music, so I don't have to listen to a 45 square meter room, but I only have to listen to something that's more 25 square meters, And that is the ideal space for most pieces of equipment, around 20 to 35 square meters. That is the ideal space, typically around 25, 30 square meters. So if you would have a 5 by 5 meter room, 25 square meters, that would typically be perfect. So try and go for that. That's really going to make you save a lot of money. And another tip here, okay? Man, I'm just giving you tip after tip today. This position here, I once had a temporary plastic wall going from here, wrapped around the corner, behind the chair, touching the chair, going at around this height here, head height, still coupled to the chair, touching the chair, then going down here, behind this chair, against the wall. So I have basically had half a plastic wall covering this area, taking care of grabbing most of the sound waves here. That is one of the most magical things that you can do as a sound user. That would really, really improve any room if you could do that. Nobody does that because it looks horrible. Just like these speakers, they also look horrible to some people. I understand that, especially if you have a wife. It's one of those things that you can do that makes things just magical. And just like I mentioned, this speaker cable here, something that a lot of people don't do. A lot of people, they use 2.5, maybe even 3 meter speaker cable. Use 4 meter speaker cable generally, because 4 meters will smooth out the sound, smooth out the roughness. If it's a thin, slightly analytical sound cable, it will smooth that out, give a bit more of a depth to the music. Yes, you'll lose a tiny bit of that immediateness, that instantaneousness. But trust me, when you have a speaker like this, that really reacts to everything, you won't feel that as a negative at all. Now, if I really wanted to destroy this sound in this room, I would just change the speaker cable to a standard Walmart speaker cable, or whatever you call it, hardware store speaker cable, that probably costs only like $10. I would have standard plugs, or not even plugs on them, put them directly on the terminals. I would then, if I had to destroy the sound, I would then use normal power cables, normal $1 power cables. Normal power cables, people have to know this, normal power cables have no personality at all. They're completely dead, they're meaningless, they're insincere, there's no body, there's no nothing. You basically just get the basic shell of what it is that you own. So there's no color, there's no artistry, nothing. It can work to a certain degree, and especially if you have an oversaturated sound, like let's say you have some old Carter's cables that really produce a lot of bass. That could be like a temporary way of compensating. So it could possibly sound slightly better, because when you have standard power cables, you have a thinned out sound, you have no personality, at least it retracts from that thick Cardass sound, making it slightly more neutral. So in certain cases, yeah, go for that. Okay. If you also have some very low budget, overly warm sound gear, let's just say that you have Torhauge or an really old Macintosh MC275 amplifier. These are amplifiers that are really, really warm and heavy. So you might not want to go with really good cables, because they'll tell you that these amplifiers are pretty limited and pretty warm, pretty restrictive in sound, and you might want to just, thin that out a tiny bit so it doesn't feel like you've got, handcuffs on the sound, making everything really artificially heavy. So in a few certain circumstances, I get it. Go with standard cables. And if you've got a low budget system, fine, use normal power cables, but just realize that once you go up to once you start going up to some really decent equipment, like a very low level Audi Note amplifier, or let's say a mid-class Macintosh amplifier, or let's say a lower class ear or Jadis amplifier, stuff like that. Once you start tinkering with equipment like that, only then start using proper cables, okay? And whatever you use, you can always go for a more expensive solution, but it won't always make a lot of sense. Just use what's appropriate in your situation, and I would generally not recommend using more than $10,000 all in all on maybe the 10 cables that you're using in your system. I would generally not recommend using more than that until you get up to equipment that's at least Audi Note mid-class equipment, because a lot of what happens with these cables and these plugs and power conditioners and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to listen to it before you have equipment that's really high quality. And to make it high quality, you need a lot of these things that I've just told you about in these 4 videos that I've created. And so yeah, let's say you're struggling with something. Let's say you're struggling with your streamer or your computer Mac sound, or you have some kind of a media converter between your DAC here and your streamer up there, When you're struggling with things like this, things don't make sense. You try different plugs, you try different cables, you're confused. Always go back to the basics, okay? What is powering all of these things? The box. The box. The box does a lot. If I were to change this box to let's say a normal IKEA box that costs like $3, it would sound a lot more harsh. The volume control would be all over the place. I would constantly have to go back to the amplifier and turn it up and down because there's so much noise going on. Now, you can buy boxes like Supra, cheap gigawatt ones, all kinds of things, what's it called, Syndac or whatever. They all do things that are interesting and in some ways good, but you will find that going from a standard box that doesn't filter the sound, it will sound harsh. Going over to let's say a Supra, it will sound a lot more filtered, a lot more refined. Detail starts to get separated, put into boxes. Volume control gets significantly better. Then when you get from that over to like a good Syndac box, you will start getting a lot more evolved sound, more natural. And then when you go up to like for example a gigawatt power box that costs like $1,000 or something like that. So suddenly you're in a completely different class of filtering. Everything just clicks, a lot more natural, so on and so on. Then you go into something like this. And this totally changes. It just blows everything away. Everything becomes natural. Everything becomes itself. There's no filter. There's no harshness. There's no constant, artifacts or anything that pollutes the sound. Everything just gets really black. The background gets black. You get all the details. You get all the separation. You get a really deep sound stage. It's so evolved and natural. It's one of the few filters that you can't hear. And what you have to know, that one of the magic things that makes this box really fantastic is that there are so few components in it. And that's crucial. Most of these boxes that filter the sound, they have way too many components. And all of the components are really, really cheap, So every single, this box is just like a piece of Audi Note equipment, okay? It's one of the most underrated boxes in the entire audio industry, This will make everything that you own click with whatever speaker you have, or whatever amplifier, or whatever you're using. It will make everything come together. So that's all. Been ranting on for a while. I hope this helps you guys, and tell me if you want me to make videos about something else. Over and out.